Welcome to this audiobook, a book that is not meant to be merely heard, but to awaken your thoughts, deepen your perspective, and perhaps even slightly change the direction of your thinking. In a world where speed has replaced depth and sounds surround us from every direction, mindful listening is a choice to pause, to reflect, and to build a better version of ourselves. This audiobook is the result of ideas, experiences, and lessons that can inspire. Not to tell you what to do, but to help you see more clearly and make better decisions for yourself. We recommend listening to this audiobook with an open mind and without haste. Sometimes a single sentence, when heard at the right moment, can change years of our lives. Thank you for dedicating your valuable time to this work. We hope this voice becomes a good companion on your journey of intellectual and personal growth. Here is a detailed summary of Blink, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking, by Malcolm Gladwell, with expanded insights, examples, themes, and lessons. Blink explores how humans make snap decisions, fast, instinctive judgments that occur in seconds. Gladwell argues that our unconscious mind can often make accurate decisions faster than careful analysis, a process he calls thin slicing, drawing conclusions from very small amounts of information. However, these rapid judgments can also be distorted by bias, prejudice, and emotion. Core concept: thin slicing. Thin slicing means making quick, meaningful decisions based on minimal data. Gladwell shows that experts can detect patterns instantly because their brains have been trained through experience. Key examples: art experts instantly recognize a statue as fake despite scientific tests confirming it as authentic. Psychologist John Gottman could predict a divorce after observing couples briefly. Emergency room doctors improved accuracy by simplifying decision rules rather than overanalyzing data. If we listen closely, Tabaris pointed out, it was clear that Bill was being very defensive. In the language of SPAF, he was cross-complaining and engaging in yes-but tactics, appearing to agree but then taking it back. Bill was coded as defensive, as it turned out, for 40 of the first 66 seconds of their conversation. As for Sue, while Bill was talking, on more than one occasion she rolled her eyes very quickly, which is a classic sign of contempt. Bill then began to talk about his objection to the pen where the dog lives. Sue replied by closing her eyes and then assuming a patronizing, lecturing voice. Bill went on to say that he didn't want a fence in the living room. Sue said, "I don't want to argue about that," and rolled her eyes. Another indication of contempt. "Look at that," Tabaris said. More contempt. We've barely started and we've seen him be defensive for almost the whole time, and she has rolled her eyes several times. At no time as the conversation continued did either of them show any overt signs of hostility. Only subtle things popped up for a second or two, prompting Tabaris to stop the tape and point them out. Some couples, when they fight, but these two were a lot less obvious. Bill complained that the dog cut into their social life, since they always had to come home early for fear of what the dog might do to their apartment. Sue responded that that wasn't true, arguing, "If she's going to chew anything, she's going to do it in the first 15 minutes that we're gone." Bill seemed to agree with that. He nodded lightly and said, "Yeah, I know," and then added, "I'm not saying it's rational. I just don't want to have a dog." Tabares pointed at the videotape. He started out with, "Yeah, I know." But it's a yes, but. Even though he started to validate her, he went on to say that he didn't like the dog. He's really being defensive. I kept thinking, he's so nice. He's doing all this validation. But then I realized he was doing the yes, but. It's easy to be fooled by them. Bill went on, "I'm getting way better. You've got to admit it. I'm better this week than last week, and the week before, and the week before." Tabares jumped in again. "In one study, we were watching Newlyweds, and what often happened with the couples who ended up in divorce is that when one partner would ask for credit, the other spouse wouldn't give it. And with the happier couples, the spouse would hear it and say, 'You're right.' That stood out. When you nod and say, 'Uh-huh,' or 'Yeah,' you are doing that as a sign of support. And here she never does it. Not once in the entire session, which none of us had realized until we did the coding. It's weird," she went on. "You don't get the sense that they are an unhappy couple when they come in. And when they were finished, they were instructed to watch their own discussion, and they thought the whole thing was hilarious. They seem fine in a way, but I don't know. They haven't been married that long. They're still in the glowy phase. When intuition works well, fast thinking works best when the decision maker has deep experience. The environment is familiar. Information is filtered to only what matters. The decision is made without overthinking. Gladwell argues that too much information can reduce accuracy, citing studies where people made worse choices when forced to analyze preferences deeply. For example, consumer tests like the jam experiment. When intuition fails, snap judgments become dangerous when influenced by unconscious bias, stereotypes, stress or fear, irrelevant information, notable cautionary stories. The Amadou Diallo shooting, where police misjudged a harmless man due to fear and bias. The halo effect, where people judge competence based on appearance. For example, Warren Harding becoming U.S. president due to looking presidential. These examples show that fast thinking can lead to tragic mistakes if not controlled. The role of bias in the unconscious. Gladwell explains that even well-meaning people carry hidden biases that shape snap decisions. These biases can affect hiring decisions, law enforcement, leadership perceptions, social interactions. He highlights research showing that people unconsciously associate race, height, and gender with competence or danger. Key themes. The power of intuition. The mind can work faster than logic. The danger of prejudice. Instincts can be wrong. The importance of context. Environment shapes decisions. Balancing instinct and reason. Neither should dominate fully. Training intuition. Experience can improve fast thinking. Practical lessons from the book. Trust instincts when you are experienced. Reduce noise. Less information can be better. Learn to recognize and correct bias. In high-stress moments, slow down decisions. Design systems that remove irrelevant signals. For example, blind auditions increase fairness in orchestras. Overall message. Blink teaches that quick decisions can be brilliant or disastrous. The goal is not to reject intuition, but to understand, train, and control it. When used wisely, thinking fast can be just as powerful as thinking slow. And now that we have reached the end of this audiobook, you may not have found answers to all your questions, and that is completely natural. The purpose of this work was not to provide definitive answers, but to plant the seeds of curiosity, awareness, and reflection in your mind. What you have heard becomes truly valuable only when it finds its way into your real life, into your decisions, into how you see yourself and others, and into the choices you make each day. Remember, great changes often begin with small but consistent thoughts. If even a single sentence from this book caused you to pause, reflect, or act differently, then this book has fulfilled its purpose. Thank you sincerely for staying with this voice until the end. We hope that what you have heard is not the end of a journey, but the beginning of a new movement in your life. So thank you for watching, and good luck, my friends.